Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Pichaya Siriwanabut. I'm a deputy head and also the senior economist of the Capacity Building and Training Department at the Asian Development Bank Institute. I will be the MC for this event today. Welcome, everyone, to the Asian Development Bank Institute 25th anniversary celebration. Today's theme is Cover the Strategy for Developing Asia Futures. And here is the program for today briefly. So just to open this 25th anniversary celebration for Asian Development Bank Institute, allow me just to invite the Dean and the CEO of Asian Development Bank Institute, Dr. Tetsushi Sonobe. Before he has joined ADBI as Dean and CEO in 2020, and prior to that, Dean Sonobe served for 6 years as the Vice President of the National Graduate Institute for Policy Study in Tokyo. Dean Sonobe is also a recipient of the Nikkei Book Publication Prize and Masayoshi Ohira Memorial Prize, and the founding board member of the Japanese Association for Development Economics. To open this celebration, Dean Sonobe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. So, Governor Kuroda, Minister Srimuniani Indrawati, President Masatsugu Asakawa, Excellencies, honorable speakers, and distinguished guests. We are gathering here today to celebrate the ADBI 25th anniversary of its founding as ADB's Tokyo-based think tank. As the current Dean of ADBI, I'd like to extend my warmest welcome to you all to our celebration. I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to ADB President Masatsugu Asakawa for his continuous strong support for ADBI. It's a great honor to receive the messages from Governor Kuroda, Bank of Japan, and the Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Indonesia's Ministry of Finance. At this important milestone, I would like to acknowledge all parties who have played a vital role in ADBI's development and its endeavor to contribute to the economic, social, and environmental development in Asia and the Pacific. Today, we are pleased to have some of such persons with us as speakers, including Professor Naoyuki Yoshino, former Dean of ADBI, Dr. J. Ha Park, former Deputy Dean of ADBI, and Professor Sayuri Shirai, ADBI Visiting Fellow. My sincere gratitude also goes to Assistant Governor Arisara Mahasandana from Bank of Thailand, ADB Alternate Executive Director Xiao Liu, Dr. Deepak Mishra, Director and Chief Executive, Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations, or ICRIA, and Dr. Iskandar Abdullayev, Deputy Director, Carrick Institute. Your support and collaboration have always been extremely helpful. This year, we have had an event called the 25th Anniversary Essay Contest. I would like to congratulate the winners of the contest, Ms. Daisy Singh, Ms. Shujie Liang, and Mr. Hazwan Haini. We are excited to hear your proposals that represent the voice of younger generation. Since its establishment in 1997, ADBI has worked on knowledge creation and dissemination and capacity building and training for developing Asia and the Pacific as part of one ADB. Over the years, it has welcomed professionals and young scholars from different sub-regions and worked closely with regional and global partner organizations to explore innovative approaches and solutions to persistent or emerging policy challenges in socioeconomic transitions in the region. A groundswell of goodwill among these individuals and organizations has been instrumental in ADBI's accomplishment that we are looking back on and celebrating today in this event. In closing my opening remarks, I would like to add that although today's program is rich in recollection, reflection, and reminiscences, it will also be rich in suggestions and clues to the future. I would also like to add that our ADB history book has just been released. Please download this new book during this event. The link is shown in the chat, I think. If not, yeah, it will be shown soon. With that, I thank you for your attention and look forward to celebration and fruitful discussions.
Thank you very much, Dean Sonobe, for your opening remark. Allow me just to move to the next in the agenda. We receive the congratulatory message from President of Asian Development Bank and the chairperson of the ADB's Board of Directors, Mr. Masatsugu Asakawa. Allow me to briefly introduce him. He has been selected as elected as the president of ADB on 17 January 2020. Prior to joining ADB, he served as a special advisor to the Japanese Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, and has been close to 4 decades career at the Ministry of Finance with diverse professional experiences that cut across both domestic and international fronts. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the congratulatory message from President Asakawa.
Governor Kuroda, Minister Sri Muliani, Assistant Governor Arisahara, Dean Sonobe, distinguished guests. It is my great pleasure to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Asian Development Bank Institute. Over the years, ADBI's work has evolved to tackle the most pressing global socioeconomic issues. These have included addressing poverty and instability after the global financial crisis, supporting countries in developing Asia to escape the middle-income trap, and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic while building for strong recovery. I am proud of ADBI's close collaboration with ADB's knowledge departments to address these and other challenges. Today's theme reflects ADBI's continued relevance to promoting sustainable and inclusive economic development in the region. I urge deeper collaboration to build closer partnerships between ADB and ADBI under our vision of One ADB. The networks we built are crucial for effective international policy cooperation. Let me end by saying that I deeply appreciate ADBI's work over the past 25 years. I wish you fruitful deliberations at this gathering, and I look forward to our continued progress toward a more prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific.
And that is the message from the President Asakawa, the President of Asian Development Bank. We would like to pass our deep appreciation to him for this message. Next in the agenda, we have received the keynote addresses from the high-level government official. First is from the Bank of Thailand, Bank of Japan, Banks of Japan, Governor Haruhiko Kuroda. He was appointed as the governor of the Bank of Japan in March 2013 after serving for 8 years as the president of the Asian Development Bank. Prior to his position at the ADB, Mr. Kuroda was special advisor to the cabinet of the Prime Minister Koimushi, while he was a professor at the Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo too. Distinguished guests, this is the keynote address from Governor Kuroda.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to send this video message for the 25th anniversary of the Asian Development Bank Institute. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my heartfelt congratulations to Dean Sonobe, President Asakawa of the Asian Development Bank, and all the ADBI staff on this happy occasion. The ADBI was inaugurated as a subsidiary of the ADB in December 1997 in the midst of the Asian financial crisis to conduct research and provide capacity building and training to support the ADB's program in Asia and the Pacific. The crisis severely affected East and Southeast Asian countries and led to deep recessions. However, countries in the region learned from the crisis. They worked both individually and collectively to strengthen economic fundamentals and financial market structures, and most of the region recovered relatively strongly. Meanwhile, the rest of Asia has shown strong growth in the last 25 years with the progress made in trade liberalization and foreign investment. Now, 25 years after the crisis, Asian economies are the largest contributor to global growth. However, important challenges remain, in particular, our response to climate change. With the world's most populous and fastest growing economies, Asia emits the largest volume of greenhouse gases, producing about half the world's carbon dioxide. Asia is also the region most prone to natural disasters. With extensive coastlines, low-lying territories, and many small island states, its geography makes it highly susceptible to rising sea levels and weather extremes, including typhoons, tropical cyclones, wildfires, floods, and drought. Rising sea levels alone could directly affect millions of people, potentially submerging many cities. To complicate matters, many economies in Asia are having to cope with the effects of climate change while at the same time trying to raise living standards and deal with significant infrastructure needs. These vast challenges make the financing of adaptation measures particularly important. The ADB estimates that the region must invest $1.7 trillion a year in infrastructure through 2030 to maintain growth momentum, eradicate poverty, and respond to climate change. From a different viewpoint, Asia may be well positioned to address these challenges and benefit from the opportunities that come from managing climate risk effectively. Infrastructure and urban areas are still developing in many parts of Asia. This gives the region a chance to ensure that new infrastructure is more resilient and better able to withstand heightened risk. At the same time, key economies in the region are advanced in the technologies that are necessary to adapt to and mitigate climate change, ranging from electric vehicles to renewable energy. By maximizing these opportunities and sharing best practices with the rest of the world, Asia can become a leader in one of the most significant challenges facing the world. I believe the ADBI is ideally positioned to support the region's economies in their efforts to adapt to and mitigate the challenges of climate change. The Institute has been addressing climate change issues since as early as 2010. It has completed a number of projects assessing policy initiatives, identifying gaps, and examining new opportunities for greener growth. I expect more research will be conducted in this field to strengthen the region's voice in the international arena. The objective of the ADBI is to look ahead to the next 10 to 20 years and focus on the region's medium to long-term development issues of strategic importance. This means that the scope of research does not have to be limited to climate change. With its flexible and nimble approach under the leadership of successive deans, including Dr. Naoyuki Yoshino and Dean Sonobe, the ADBI has always been able to focus its expertise on timely themes such as infrastructure for regional cooperation. The Institute also excels in integrating research, capacity building, and training and outreach. Scaling up capacity development is crucial to ensuring that government officials have the skills necessary to handle complex issues. While I served as president of the ADB from 2005 to 2013, I interacted with two ADBI deans, Dr. Peter McCauley and Dr. Masahiro Kawai. Dr. McCauley directed the institution with great success, thanks to his experience as Deputy Director General of OSAID and as an Executive Director of the ADB. He also promoted use of the Internet to share information more widely with the public. Dr. Kawai, who took office as Dean in 2007, after serving as a special advisor to the ADB President in charge of regional economic cooperation and integration, helped improve significantly the quality of research, as well as capacity building and training, and put the ADBI on the list of leading global think tanks. The ADBI is now recognized as a leading regional and global think tank. The Institute was ranked as the world's top government-affiliated think tank for the second consecutive year in the 2020 Global Go-To Think Tank Index report published by the University of Pennsylvania. In this age of worldwide uncertainties, there are both challenges and opportunities for the Asian region. There are also high expectations for the region to make a key contribution to the global agenda. To that end, the ADBI has a crucial role to play in providing intellectual leadership and promoting knowledge sharing in the region. I'm confident that the ADBI will take up that role and provide essential support for the region's challenges. In closing, I would like to once again to extend my sincere congratulations on the 25th anniversary of the ADBI and to thank all those who have made this possible. I look forward to the 30th, 40th, 50th, and many more anniversaries to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor Kuroda, for your kind word and also congratulatory message from us, as well as highlighting the work that ADBI has done in the past in both research and capacity building areas. The next addressee is from the Ministry of Finance Indonesia, Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati. She has first elected as the Minister of Finance in December 2005 and was also appointed as the Managing Director and the Chief Operating Officer of the World Bank in June 2010. She was appointed again as the Minister of Finance in July 2016 and October 2019. She was also awarded as the best minister in the world at the World Government Summit in February 2018, and as the Finance Minister of the Year for East Asia Pacific from Global Market Magazine in 2022. With no further ado, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, here is the keynote address from Minister Sri Mulyani.
Your Excellency, Masatsugu Asakawa, President of the Asian Development Bank, Your Excellency Haruhiko Kuroda, Governor of the Bank of Japan, Honorable Tetsushi Sonobe, Dean, as well as CEO of the ASEAN Development Bank Institute, fellow ministers, governors, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to all of you. First, I would like to convey congratulations and a happy 25th anniversary for the ASEAN Development Bank Institute. I would like to also compliment the Dean and CEO management, as well as all staff of the ADBI for this 25 years achievement. Since its establishment in 1997, Asian Development Bank Institute has been playing a significant role in research, publication, capacity building, and knowledge sharing on ASEAN development. Recently, we recognized and highly appreciate ADBI's role in supporting the Indonesia G20 presidency on the finance track and Sherpa track through Think 20 or T20 to conduct the main and side event, as well as communicate our priorities and agenda to the world. We also would like to convey appreciation to ADBI for publishing Creative Economy 2030 with a special focus on Indonesia as a global creative economic powerhouse, G20 presidency in 2022, and ASEAN chair in 2023. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the IMF has projected global economic growth to significantly decelerate from 6.0% in 2021 to only 3.2% in 2022 and 2.7% in 2023. The consistent downward revision of the global outlook from all international institutions have marked increasingly risks we face this year and next year. Multiple factors have fueled this condition, such as the war in Ukraine that aggravated the already soaring inflation pressure and much tighter monetary policy to fight inflation. The major near-term challenges become much more complex and highly interrelated. Despite the elevating pressure in the global economy, some Asia-Pacific countries are still performing well. Several ASEAN countries such as Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and of course Indonesia have experienced an increasing growth trend beginning in first quarter 2023 and continue to third quarter 2022. ADB projected that Southeast Asia will achieve economic growth of 5.1% in 2022 and 5.0% in 2023. This is certainly much higher than the global growth. Strong recovery is also seen in many other Asia-Pacific countries. This robust performance are a good foundation for further thriving, but this region cannot let the guard down. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to address the issue of energy and sustainability. The current global challenge, it is not only pandemic, but also we are all under the threat of climate change, including in this case, how we are going to design sustainable development and designing mitigation and adaptation action. People and country need to adjust to this climate change threat. Indonesia recently has submitted enhanced national determined contribution to the UNFCCC Secretariat. We increased our emission reduction from 29% to 31.89% unconditionally, and from 41% to 43.2% conditionally. This will be aligned with our long-term low carbon and climate resilience strategy up till to 2050, with a vision to achieve net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. As a concrete step in materializing this commitment, Indonesia has launched Energy Transition Mechanism, which is officially announced during COP26 in Glasgow, and as a collaboration between Indonesia and ADB. This Energy Transition Mechanism, or ETM, is designed to speed up the retirement of coal-fired power plants earlier, and also to improve and promote renewable energy development. By implementing the ETM program, we wish to accelerate our pathway toward net zero, especially on the energy sector. The establishment of the Indonesia ETM country platform has been officially announced during our G20 summit in November 14, 2022. This country platform aimed to mobilize private and international participation in financing our energy transition mechanism project in a blended finance scheme and seek an appropriate financing scheme transaction approaches that benefit community, regional economies, as well as our environment. The government of Indonesia has received indication of interest from several development partners to participate in this ETM project. During the G20 summit, the government has also announced the joint statement under the Just Energy Transition Partnership, or JETP, led by the United States, Japan, and as well as other partners, by indicating a potential financing up to $20 billion, JETP will support our ETM program. In October 2022, government has also received funding commitment from Climate Investment Fund, or CIF, at the amount of $500 million to be leveraged up to $4 billion to also support our ETM platform. We want our ETM program to be a concrete showcase of transition activity and investment that can successfully mobilize the participation of our development partner, global private investors, as well as philanthropists. We expect that this can be replicated in other developing countries. I'm also expecting to see the inclusion of energy transition in the ADBI's research project in the next 3 years. There is still a deliberation about whether the retirement of coal-fired power plants itself could be considered emission reduction rather than merely emission avoidance. The ADBI can tap into this area of deliberation to be further researched. So the collaboration of the ADB is currently undertaking on the ETM can be also strongly supported by the ADBI, including, of course, in this case, how a country can reduce emission and also provide and develop instruments, for example, like carbon market. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to provide optimal benefit for our people, we ensure that all reform and innovative policy above are research-based. That is why in all reform and innovative policy taken, Indonesia always open to the involvement of think tank to provide our advice, as well as jointly formulate and evaluate our policy. Reform are currently continuing, and there is still a lot of work to be done. In the future, support from the think tanks, including from the ADB Institute, on the previously mentioned issue will definitely welcome and mostly also benefiting for many of our member countries. Indonesia will take ASEAN chairmanship in 2023. Our theme for this chairmanship is going to be ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. We have identified potential topics for ASEAN priority agenda, including digital economy, sustainable finance, recovery from the impact of the pandemic, and building regional capacity in producing vaccine, infrastructure financing, as well as financial inclusion for small and medium enterprises. The ADBI can also actively support and engage in our delivering the ASEAN priority agenda under Indonesia leadership next year, as some of the identified priority which I've already mentioned. This is also, I believe, aligned well with your expertise in the ADBI Institute. To conclude, I would like to once again congratulate ADBI Institute on its silver anniversary. I believe the ADBI can maintain its improved performance to support the development in Asia and Pacific. Thank you and happy 25th anniversary.
Thank you very much. And that is the keynote address from Minister C. Mulyani. We would like to express our deep appreciation for her congratulatory message and also for her suggestion in the area that ADBI research and capacity building program can support in the future. Next in the program, we will proceed with the panel discussion on the ADBI Journal for Development in Asia and the Pacific. I have an honor just to have my colleague from ADBI, Dr. Peter Morgan, to be a moderator for this session. He is the consulting economist and the advisor to the Dean of ADBI. So previously, he served as an ADBI's Vice Chair for Research until the March 2020. Peter, I give the floor to you to proceed with this session.
Thanks very much, Pichaya. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone. It's my great honor to moderate this session. The aim of the session is to share ADBI's journey and impact of its research, capacity building, and outreach milestones in supporting Asia and the Pacific's economic development. And it will also highlight ADBI's knowledge contributions to policy design and implementation for promoting a more prosperous, resilient, and inclusive regional economy. So to that end, we have three excellent panelists who I'd like to introduce. They've all have had extensive experience at ADBI, and I've had the pleasure of working with all of them. First is Professor Sayuri Shidai. She's visiting fellow at ADBI and also professor at the Faculty of Policy Management at Keio University and a former policy board member of the Bank of Japan. She was a senior advisor to ESG Engagement Services located in London 2020 through 2021. And she's also has taught at Sciences Po in 2007, 2008. Our second panelist is Professor Naoyuki Yoshino. He's Professor Emeritus at Keio University, the former Dean and CEO of ADBI, and Director of the Financial Research Center of the Financial Services Agency of Japan. And he obtained his PhD from Johns Hopkins University in 1979, and he has been a visiting scholar at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a visiting professor at various universities, including the University of South Wales, the Fondation Nationale des Sciences Politiques in France, and the University of Gothenburg. Our third panelist is Dr. Jae-ha Park. He's honorary fellow at the Korea Institute of Finance and is a former deputy dean of ADBI and also served earlier in 2000-2002. He's also a visiting professor of Sukmyeong Women's University, and he has served in numerous public positions, such as senior advisor to the Minister of Finance and Economy of Korea, Director General of the Task Force of Economic Restructuring in the Office of the President of Korea. So we'll first have some 7-minute interventions each from the panelists, and then we'll go to Q&A and then have a wrap up. So let me first ask Professor Shirai to give her presentation. Professor Shirai, the floor is yours. You have 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to talk about East Asian crisis in the 1990s, since I worked closely with the Dean Yoshitomi to formulate a lot of policy recommendation. So East Asian crisis was basically capital account crisis. The crisis happened due to the sudden reversal of capital flow, and basically it was cross-border banking sector financing schemes. There was 4 lessons from this East Asian crisis, and let me explain what was the 4 lessons and what's happened to Asia since then. The first lesson was that I think Asian countries depended too much on the banking system, and then at that time we didn't pay a lot of attention to the soundness of banking sector and supervision. But on this, I think there was a significant improvement. Due to the global financial regulations. I think a lot of Asian banking sector is more sound, and they have a more adequate capital and liquidities. So things are improved quite significantly since then. The second lesson was that I think Asian crisis reminded us that Asia needs to diversify the sources of financing. And at that time, major borrowing from a foreign country was basically banking system, banking borrowing. And so diversification of the this financing scheme was very important. On this, I think there was also significant improvement. Asia now depends a lot on the security capital market and equity and bond market, and in addition to the banking borrowing. So I think the Asia became more diversified. The third lesson was that at that time, Asian countries didn't pay a lot of attention to the foreign reserves. There was also off-balance usage of a foreign reserve. So Asia was not sure how much foreign reserves they had, especially with regards to the short-term foreign borrowing. On this, I think Asian countries improved a lot. There is a monitoring scheme, and a lot of countries now pay attention to how much foreign reserves they have with regards to the short-term external debt. So I think Asia has a more foreign reserve compared to those days. The final the lesson was that at that time, many Asian countries had a fixed exchange rate regime. It was more rigid. And on this also, many Asian countries have more flexible floating exchange rate scheme and occasional intervention in the foreign exchange market to smoothen the foreign exchange volatility. So I think on these 4 lessons, Asian countries improved a lot. Now, having said that, there are at least 2 challenges since then. One is that as a result of this diversification of foreign financing schemes, now a lot of Asian countries depend a lot on the cross-border bond market and capital equity market, and especially this bond market are more integrated globally. So, and therefore, those domestic currency denominated bond market, it's good that they improve the double mismatches, maturity and currency mismatch. But at the same time, because bond market are far more integrated and globally, so Asian countries are subject to foreign investor sentiment. So as is the case right now, many Asian countries, they have an independent monetary policy, but they are very affected by US monetary policy. In that sense, independence is somewhat questioned. So this is one challenge. So bond market gives us more long-term financing scheme, local currency, but it's very subject to the foreign investor sentiment. Finally, another challenge is that because global investors look at the macro fundamental of Asian country, and then they look at the fiscal balance and the current account balance. So Asian country which have a current account surplus and fiscal surplus tends to get more capital flow. Now, that means that Asian countries have to maintain the current account surplus, so they may not able to have a current account deficit, and therefore they may have a constraint on investment, business investment. We need a lot of investment to green our economy. So that is one issue. I think I take too much time. So this is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for an excellent summary. Now I'd like to call on Professor Yoshino to give his presentation. Professor Yoshino, the floor is yours. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have 4 points I would like to make. When I was a dean at ADB Institute from 2014 to 2020, I first tried to capture the demand-driven research and what would be most important in the region. And the first topic was the infrastructure investment. And then I noticed that infrastructure investment, PPP, public-private partnerships, had been well discussed. However, many of them failed because private sector investors cannot receive enough revenue, rate of return, because infrastructure mainly relied on user charges in this diagram. And on the right-hand side, private investors prefer high rate of return and users prefer low fees. So there is a conflict between users and private investors in PPP scheme. That is why PPP didn't do very well in many parts of the world. So I tried to include other revenues for private investors. That I focused on the spillover impacts of infrastructure investment. And in Asia, in India, right now, their internet and broadband industries are now trying to utilize my method. And also in Latin America, light rail train has started to implement those spillover effects as an external sources. So that is one topic I did. Second topic is the small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, are engine of growth. However, they are very difficult to borrow money from banks. One of the ways to mitigate those difficulties is credit guarantee. If you look at this figure, in Japanese case, credit guarantee has increased significantly after COVID-19. And then default ratio has been dropped significantly. But many Asian countries wondered, what is the optimal credit guarantee ratio? Should it be 85%, 90%, and so on? And there is a moral hazard problem of credit guarantee system. Banks would like to receive credit guarantee and then lend money to riskier SMEs. Then the default risks have been accumulated in credit guarantee system. Typical case is the Mongolian credit guarantee system. They were almost go into bankrupt. So in order to avoid those moral hazard problem, we have to have, there are two ways, differentiated guarantee fees based on their risks. This is the method created by CRD, Credit Risk Database, collecting by SMEs data, and then classified 10 different groups of SMEs. And then they applied different credit guarantee fee that can avoid the moral hazard problem of the banks. Last 2 points is environmental finance. Recently, ESG or green investments had been advocated. However, recently, the credit rating agencies have a different definition of ESG scores. So this is a case of the vertical axis is a different ESG score based on different rating agency. And this will distort the optimal portfolio allocation because investors are looking at one rating agency to another. And this is the empirical example that the third line shows different rating agency will give us different portfolio allocation. In order to stop this distorted portfolio allocation, one of the ways is to introduce carbon tax and unify the carbon tax to all over the world. That is one way to mitigate these disparities. Last one is the fiscal sustainability. DOMA condition comparing interest rate and growth rate of the economy had become very wide known. However, DOMA condition applies only to United States. All other countries has to look at the supply of government bonds and demand for government bonds. And we created a new formula to look at the fiscal sustainability, which can be replaced by DOMA condition. And nowadays, Philippine government is going to introduce my method. And that is what we are doing in my days of 2014 and 2020. And I hope that ADBI could continue demand-driven research and then solving real issues and then look for the future. Thank you very much. And that's all my presentation.
Hey, thanks very much for an excellent presentation and also for your good wishes. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Park to give his presentation. You have 7 minutes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Peter. First of all, I'd like to congratulate ADBI and Dr. Sonobe and the other staff actually for celebrating this 25th anniversary. And I'm really happy to meet my former colleagues, among others, the Professor Yoshino and Professor Shirai and Peter. And I couldn't meet them actually for long years because of the COVID pandemic. And when I was invited to this, the event, I felt really, proud, first of all. And also really, I was, quite sentimental because, really time flies. When I retrospect, for the past 25 years, and when I attended the first anniversary, the event of ADBI, I was quite young in my early 40 years, but I become quite old now. And at that much, actually, the ADBI, has accomplished a lot for the past 25 years. And as Peter, asked me, the two questions on my presentation, actually, what has, ADBI done for the past 25 years? For the past 25 years, I think, I dare say ADBI has significantly contributed to the region's development by knowledge sharing and policy design. As most of us well know, actually ADBI was established based on the Asian financial crisis, 1997 and 8. Just after the financial crisis, our first of all, most important mission was what should be the post-crisis development paradigm for Asian region through. So actually, for that purpose, actually ADBI has collaborated a lot with the leading research think tanks and government institutions in the region, and most of the the important result was presented by Dr. Shirai in her the presentation. And after overcoming the Asian financial crisis, ADBI started to support overarching poverty reduction goal in this region by handling relating topics such as the growth, inequality, and poverty reduction, and trade openness and poverty reduction, and ICT and poverty reduction, and finally gender, social development, and national governance, etc. And after these, the issues later periods, this work has been guided by the three strategy theme of the ADBI. They are first, the inclusive and sustainable growth, regional cooperation and integration, and the governance for policies and institutions. I think, the ADBI has accomplished a lot and become recognized as one of the leading global think tanks by creating and sharing knowledge and economic development in the Asia and the Pacific region. When I worked for the Deputy Dean, and at the time, the ranking of the global think tanks was announced every year, but every year the ADBI was ranked quite high, not only in the regional think tanks, but also in a global think tank levels. So it became quite well recognized. And also it contributed a lot to the policy guideline, policy setup, and the implementation of all the regional the governments. That is the brief history of the past 25 years. But my second issue, the next slide, my second issue was how ADBI can contribute more to the regional, the governments and the countries for their economic development and poverty reduction, etc. And I think first of all, ADBI's the themes and the issues should be more well developed and timely. So for the past 25 years, the main theme was poverty reduction and growth for the developing member countries. It's true, still many people and millions of, and maybe hundreds of millions of people are on the poverty level. However, beyond those and poverty reduction issues, I think the Asian governments, Asian countries should also strive to develop on other issues. I think the most of the minister of Indonesia, Indrawati, well developed the presented and the couple of important issues also. And first of all, currently one of the most important issues is the ESG, namely environmental, social, and governance. And those the issues among particularly more focus should be on the climate change issues. That should be the most in the next period one of the most important the research and the capacity building and training topic of the ADB Institute. And also new technology and the digital transformation for sustainable economic growth in the future, and also redesigning and restructuring industrial structure faced with the fourth industrial revolution. When we retrospect, actually more than 200 years ago, most of the Asian countries were far behind of the Western countries in the industrial revolution. The result was quite an important, crucial. So Asian countries should not be retarded and late for the fourth industrial revolution. So I hope ADBI can contribute not only in the research, but also on the capacity building and the training in just pursuing these new issues. So fourth industrial revolution and the digital transformation, and those issues are quite important for the next 25 years. And how to improve the ADBI's the research and CBT activities. I want to recommend ADBI widely utilize outside resources and experts in the region, taking into account the limited budget and staff in the ADBI. And from my own experience also, ADBI has a lot of the important issues to touch upon. However, it's the manpower and the budget is really limited. So the only solution is how to collaborate with the region outside think tanks and experts. So particularly for the next important issues, ADBI need to collaborate more aggressively with outside experts and regional think tanks. So by doing based on those kind of the co-work and network, actually the ADBI can touch upon more important issues and contribute to the regional the governments and the countries actually in designing the policies and implementing those policies to the real world. From my own experience, it's not very important issue. However, I hope actually ADBI select right participants in the ADBI's CBT events and activities. Maybe maybe I hope it is my own experience, only my own experience. But actually, from my own experience, actually, when we organize the events and deliver important issues, many countries send the too high the ranking staff to our ADBI event. And many of them, I worry that actually they cannot understand in some way. And also they are not so eager to absorb new knowledge and issues. So my third recommendation is to select the right participants in the ADBI's CBT events. And based on the recent, actually, the technological development and also limited resources, I want to recommend to utilize more diverse tools and technologies. As we do right now today, actually, ADBI may well balance the on-site event and as well as with the kind of the Zoom, based on the web-based events more aggressively. So by doing that, the ADBI can deliver many people more efficient way. My final recommendation is actually to ADBI need to collect information how its activities are really used reflected in the policy design and implementation. I don't know how ADBI is utilizing the result framework, which I just established when I worked as a deputy dean. So by more actively utilizing the result framework, ADBI needs to collect more information how its events and activities are really utilized for the regional member countries in their policy design and implementation. As many other the issues also can be touched upon, but actually I think the President Asakawa and the Governor Kuroda and the Minister Indrawati already gave so much important the messages to the ADBI's future activities. So I hope ADBI can contribute and also more recognized as important the global think tank in the next 25 years. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for excellent comments and suggestions, which we will certainly take to heart. Now we have time for questions from our audience. So please enter them in the Q&A box. We have one currently from Daniel Augustin. This is for Professor Yoshino. It says, Dean, nice framework on PPP. How do you resolve the conflict? And maybe it would have been helpful to have your famous chart on spillovers as to how precisely that the transfer of the tax revenues would have been affected. But would you like to address this question?
Okay, thank you very much. I didn't use that spillover effects, but important of infrastructure has externality effects into the region. And infrastructure, water supply, electricity, road, railways, they can bring new businesses into the region. And then that will contribute increases of tax revenues. And in the past, all those tax revenues went to the government, and the infrastructure investors only relied on user charges. That's why PPP didn't do very well. So I'm proposing first measure those spillover tax revenues, and then share those increased tax revenues with the government and private investors. That can increase the rate of return for private investors. And actually, we did so many empirical analysis in many countries. And in India, the broadband India network, President Ramachandran and Amitabh Kant under the Prime Minister Modi are now thinking of using those methods into India. That's all my brief explanation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A at the moment. So maybe I would just like to invite our panelists to maybe give just 1 minute of their final thoughts and suggestions for ADBI in the next 25 years. Unfortunately, Professor Shirai had to leave already, but let me call on Jehat to give us his parting thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I don't have any specific, the more comments, but actually I'd like to, to mention just one thing. ADBI has a much, the works and missions, in the future. So I hope actually they select, very important and timely issues for the region and collaborate with the regional think tanks and experts like, Professor Yoshino, who is already outside member, so actually can contribute a lot to the ADBI's future activities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Professor Yoshino, any final thoughts?
Okay, thank you. As Jehat Park has touched upon in his presentation, I think digital network is very important for capacity building. In the past, everybody has to come to Tokyo or come to one country. However, digital technology can allow many people can listen the same seminar to all over the places in Asia. I think Asian Development Institute should utilize those digital technologies a lot so that much more people can participate in various seminars and capacity building and training. And that will level up the quality of government officials and researchers in Asia. So that's my comment. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. I think we're out of time, so let me close the session. I'd like to thank all the panelists very much for their contributions, and we'll certainly try to keep all those suggestions in mind going forward. So let me turn the floor back to Pichaya now.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your excellent moderating skill. And also thank you all the speaker for your suggestion and thought, sharing with us about the ADBI journal and some important current issues. So we have heard about the suggestion, the interested in many areas about the research and capacity building program, also some challenges and policy, so some of the policy solution. So our next the next session in our program is the policy dialogue on innovative approaches for the post-pandemic sustainability. Allow me to warmly welcome our Deputy Dean from the of the Asian Development Bank Institute, Dr. Sang-Shu Beck, to be the moderator for this session. So Dr. Beck's prior to joining ADBI, he served as a Deputy Minister for Planning and Coordinating at the Ministry of Economy and Finance of the Republic of Korea. He has 30 years of economic and development policy experiences. Deputy Dean Beck, I give the floor to you to proceed with this session.
Thank you, Pichaya. Good afternoon, all of you. It's a great pleasure for me to open this session, policy dialogue on innovative approaches for post-pandemic sustainability. Also, I would like to express many thanks to the speakers and participants for joining this session. As all of you know very well, the COVID-19 pandemic poses significant challenges to the sustainable development of all countries, particularly developing countries in Asia and the Pacific. In order to ensure economic and social sustainability in a post-pandemic environment, designing and implementing innovative policy strategies as well as long-term sustainability strategies are essential. In this context, this session is very timely and relevant for us to share and discuss various knowledge and policy recommendations on innovative policy strategies and approaches for post-pandemic sustainability in Asia and the Pacific. This session will also highlight the forward-looking recommendations for ADBI's research, capacity building, and outreach topics and activities. Today, we have a special 4 speakers in this session. Let me introduce our speakers. Our first speaker, Ms. Alisara Mahasandana, Ms. Mahasandana is currently Assistant Governor, Financial Market Operations Group at the Bank of Thailand. She began her career at the Bank of Thailand in 1989. She has various experience in central banking businesses, such as the areas of foreign exchange, balance of payment, reserve management, and so on. She has also worked as a senior director in the financial market department and the international department. Our second speaker, Ms. Jai Liu. Ms. Jai Liu is currently the alternate executive director for the People's Republic of China at the ADB Board of Directors. Before joining ADB in May 2021, Ms. Liu was a director at the Ministry of Finance, PRC. She has extensive working experience on China's cooperation with multilateral development banks, including World Bank, ADB, and AIIB, as well as major multilateral financial cooperation mechanisms, including G20, APEC, and ASEAN Plus 3. Our third speaker, Dr. Deepak Misra. Dr. Misra is the director and chief executive of the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations. Prior to joining ICLEA, he was the practice manager at the World Bank's Macroeconomics, Trade, and Investment Global Practice, responsible for East Asia and Pacific region. Deepak has held various positions at the World Bank and also served as the World Bank's country economist for India and working closely with the government of India. Last speaker, Dr. Iskandar Abdullayev. Dr. Abdullayev is currently Deputy Director 2 of CAREC Institute. He joined CAREC Institute as Deputy Director in June 2013. Prior to joining CAREC, he worked as regional advisor for Germany's Berlin Initiative, Transboundary Water Management in Central Asia at the German Society for International Cooperation. He has over 25 years of experience in water management, water institutions, environmental activities in Afghanistan and many Central Asian countries. Thank you very much for joining us today. Before we start, I would like to encourage the participants to actively post questions using QA box, or please use the raising hand function on your screen if you have any questions. First, let me invite Ms. Mahasandana with a question. Ms. Mahasandana, you have been working for Bank of Thailand for a long time. If we agree that innovative policy measures and strategies are very critical for sustainable development in a post-pandemic environment, what are key policy priorities that should be focused on, including monetary policy areas? Furthermore, what are the major policy measures implemented by the Bank of Thailand in response to COVID-19 impacts and to achieve post-pandemic recovery? Mr. Mahasandana, you have about 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. And thank you, ADBI, for inviting me to be part of the celebrations. First and foremost, congratulations on your 25th anniversaries, which represent the invaluable dedications on the development in Asia. It is my honor to join today's policy dialogue and share my thought on driving the economies towards sustainability for the post-pandemic recovery. Let me first share some observations on our policy response to COVID-19 before moving to talking about our policy to promote sustainable and resiliency economy. It is worth to note that policy coordination between monetary and fiscal policy, as well as the financial measures, help our economy to overcome the impact of the pandemic. In addition, cooperation from private sectors and close engagement with affected groups play an important role in delivering the appropriate assistance to the needed sector. During the pandemic, governments and other authorities, including Bank of Thailand, implement various measures such as liquidity provisions, debt restructuring program, and financial support to accommodate household businesses, and financial markets getting through the hard time. Moreover, the pandemic has driven economic activity to the more digitized world. For instance, the Thai government used application called Pao Tang, which is Thai words for wallet, to distribute government financial supports. This has been a turning point of digital adoptions in Thailand afterwards, and provide the opportunity for us to rebuild the economy to the higher potential and sustainable growth level. That said, the pandemic has also left our economy a scar of K-shaped recovery and inequality problems. Thus, the gradual and measured policy normalization, targeted financial measures to revive vulnerable sectors are essential to ensure smooth recovery and transition to the broad-based and sustainable recovery. In addition, we also remain vigilant in monitoring external challenges such as the threat of recessions, tightening financial conditions, geopolitics, to ensure financial stability is still intact. With this backdrop, we recently launched policy to reposition our financial sector to pave the way towards sustainable growth and resilience economy by focusing on data, digital innovation, and sustainabilities. First, on data, the Bank of Thailand aims to leverage the concept of open data in order to connect, share, and utilize data across relevant authorities and service providers to better serve our financial needs. Second, digital innovations. By leveraging on the power of technologies and data, we can establish open competition from new players. Regulations on banks are relaxed to allow more users of financial technologies, while virtual banking license will be introduced. Payment infrastructure have been further developed with the open and interoperability concept to enhance efficiency and wider coverage of digital payment and financial services, both domestically and cross-border. And finally, the transition towards sustainable developments. There are a lot to be done to catch up with international communities on the ESG. The Bank of Thailand are now developing the National Green Taxonomy and the Data Disclosure Guideline that consistent with the international standard and suit the local context. And also, we will consider creating incentive to steer financial sector to incorporate environmental considerations in their businesses. The Bank of Thailand does not focus only on environmental side, but also on the household debt. With the current level at 88% to GDP, the household debt in Thailand can be source of the economic vulnerabilities. While the priority are given to household debt restructurings, we also put a lot of effort to strengthen financial literacy and develop responsible lending practice to prevent over-indebtedness. I believe this policy will help reposition Thai financial landscape and drive Thai economy recovery towards resilience, inclusiveness, and sustainability. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that the various monetary policy of Bank of Thailand, including supporting household and businesses, have been very effective to overcome the COVID-19 situation, and also rapidly recovering from pandemic as well as for economic stability of Thailand. Okay, thank you very much. Next, let me ask to Ms. Liu about the PRC's policy measures for recovering post-pandemic. Ms. Liu, what is your view from the perspective of ADB on the policy priorities for post-pandemic sustainability? And given the strict lockdown due to China's zero COVID-19 policy, did the government adopt any innovative policy measures to support people and businesses? Please give examples.
Thanks, Deputy Dean Bak. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to attend the ADBI 25th anniversary celebration. With this opportunity, let me also first register our congratulations and appreciation to ADBI as one of the top government-affiliated think tanks for its achievements and a contribution to policy dialogue, knowledge dissemination, and capacity building among ADB's members, especially developing member countries over the years since its establishment. Coming back to the topic, the world economy today faces multiple challenges and downside risks. I'll mainly touch on the policy priorities of my home country, the People's Republic of China. Against these very difficult circumstances, the Chinese economy is no exception. Our government has implemented comprehensive economic policy packages to stabilize the economy and consolidate the foundation for economic recovery and growth. The 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, held last October, set the course and provide a blueprint for China's development for now and the years to come. Promoting economic resilience, inclusiveness, and sustainability is the key in China's policy agenda. Firstly, prioritize high-quality development. Pursuing high-quality development is Chinese government's overarching task. We will continue reforms, promote high-standard opening up, and accelerate efforts to enhance interplay between domestic and international economic flows. We will strive to expand domestic demand while deepening supply-side structural reform and let markets play the decisive role in resource allocation. Proactive measures are taken to foster a world-class enabling business environment that facilitates private sector growth, especially MSMEs, and attract foreign direct investment. Rural revitalization will be advanced to reinforce food security. We will also make great efforts to modernize China's systems and capacity for governance. Secondly, put people at the center and promote inclusive development. We will promote fair and balanced development of education and improve education resources allocation across regions. We will implement the employment-first strategy with an aim to promote high quality and full employment. We will further improve the multi-tiered social security system and see that it's fair, unified, reliable, well-regulated, and sustainable. The COVID-19 pandemic sounded alarms for the health system. We will give priority to people's health and ensure quality medical resources are better distributed among regions. Thirdly, pursue green and sustainable development. To protect the ecological environment and tackle climate change, we will spare no effort to advance the transition and upgrading of energy, resources, and industrial and consumption structures, and improve fiscal, taxation, financial investment, and pricing policies to support green development. We will work actively and prudently toward the goals of reaching peak carbon emissions and carbon neutrality. Fourthly and lastly, pursue open regionalism and advance regional cooperation. Given the spillover effect of the Chinese economy, we will strengthen coordination on macroeconomic policy, promote trade and investment liberalization and facilitation, stabilize regional supply and industrial chains, and steadily advance regional economic integration. China has an enormous market, which is the source of resilience of our economy. We will follow the Chinese path to modernization and continue to share our development opportunities with the world, particularly the Asia-Pacific region. On the innovative policies to support people and business against the COVID-19 pandemic, last May, our State Council laid out a package of policies for stabilizing the economy, including 33 measures involving fiscal, financial, investment, consumption, people's livelihood, among others. Since August, the State Council has further unveiled 19 follow-up measures and taken solid steps to ensure full and effective implementation of the policy packages and their follow-up measures. For example, on the fiscal front, we've taken proactive policy measures to ease tax and fee burdens on enterprises, especially for small firms. China's tax refunds, as well as tax and fee cuts and deferrals, topped 3.7 trillion yuan, or $525.8 billion as of November the 10th this year. Among the total, VAT credit refunds reached nearly 2.31 trillion yuan, more than 3.5 times the annual amount of last year. Of all the beneficiary taxpayers this year, 93.1% are SMEs who have received 917.8 billion yuan of such refunds, accounting for 39.7% of the total amount. Another example is to create jobs and promote consumption through expanding investment. To expand investment, the Chinese government has introduced 2 batches of financial instruments to provide support to 2,700 plus major projects to date. Besides, the government also provides support to platform economy, a new type of business to stabilize employment, including providing social insurance subsidies to people engaged in platform-based flexible employment while facing difficulty. Measures have also been taken to support people's basic livelihoods, such as bolstering the employment and entrepreneurship of rural migrant population and rural labor, and enhance social security measures. Rural laborers are prioritized to be employed in their major projects and public programs. For their next step, our government will continue to take solid measures to ensure full and effective implementation of the policy package, to effectively pursue pandemic response and socioeconomic development in parallel, to protect people's lives and health and minimize COVID's impact on socioeconomic development. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Liu. You highlighted high quality, inclusive, green and low carbon development as the PRC's policy directions to promote post-pandemic sustainability. You also explained the PRC's comprehensive economic policy packages and recently introduced the policy measures such as importantly job creation and increase to support increasing of the income of people. You also emphasized the importance of implementation of your policy package and policy measures. Thank you very much again. Let's move to the next speaker, Dr. Mishra, for his view. Dr. Mishra, India is the G20 presidency country next year. I think we can listen to your opinion from the G20 perspectives, as well as from the viewpoint of World Famous Research Institute of India, ECRIA. My question is, South Asia has been affected significantly by COVID-19, while the recovery seems to be unequal across the sub-region. Can you share the 2023 sub-regional outlook with us? What are policy recommendations for inclusive and sustainable development for this sub-region? Dr. Mishra, you have also 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Deputy Dean Beck. And let me begin by congratulating Dean Sonobe, Peter Morgan, and current and the former colleagues at ADBI for this very important milestone, the Silver Jubilee celebration of ADBI. For ICRIA, ADBI has been a very trusted and reliable partner for a very long period of time. We are very proud of our partnership, and we wish ADBI to be even more effective and more influential in the development space over the next 25 years. So let me take a few minutes to talk to you about the question that was asked about the macroeconomic outlook in South Asia and how the COVID and other things have affected. Like every other region in the world, South Asia has been affected by an unprecedented, multifaceted crisis. Some people call it a polycrisis. COVID has still around us. When I looked at the number today, even today, nearly 400,000 people are actively infecting the virus. More than 1,000 people are dying out of it, even at this point after 3 years of the outbreak. Thankfully, in South Asia, COVID has been a bit of a under control, though there are still numbers which are in positive number, but relative to the rest of the world, COVID is somehow in the rear view mirror, and I hope it remains that way. But along with COVID, there's been multiple crises: the global commodity price increase, debt stress in several South Asian countries, natural resource disaster like flood in Pakistan, and the fact that now we have the rising interest rate and tightening of the monetary policy and capital market, which could induce a global recession, is also affecting South Asia pretty significantly. So in a sense, it's a pretty bleak situation out there. But when it comes to the actual outcome on the ground, things are not as terrible, at least on a relatively speaking. South Asia is still expected to grow close to 5%. Inflation is still going to be around 7% in 2023. And overall, there's macroeconomic stability. So I wanted to focus just 1 minute saying, why has South Asia been relatively, I must say, absolute scale, we are all affected by COVID and the post-pandemic crisis, but how has South Asia been slightly better off, at least in focus from an Indian perspective? I think there are 3 points I want to highlight here. One is that in the post-COVID period, or during the COVID, when there's this massive stimulus that happened, India was part of it, though India did not have the ability to take as big a stimulus as other countries. But there is a fundamental difference. The stimulus in India was often used on the supply side to unblocking the supply constraint, which has often been the structural issue on the Indian development story. And this was a point which helped to India to address some of the long-standing issues rather than giving the stimulus to the demand side, which is why India, I think, and a lot of people will agree, has had a slightly better inflation trajectory than many other parts of the world, because India tends to have 3 percentage point higher inflation rate than the global average. And this time it has been actually 2 percentage point lower. The second is India did invest quite a bit in the past years in building policy and institution to ensure macro stability. So India had a Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act, which has often been used in the as a guiding principle, even if the country hasn't stuck to it every time. But there's been progress, and every successive finance committee get back to the FRBM targets as soon as possible. Second is the Flexible Inflation Targeting Act by the Reserve Bank of India, which has also been very helpful in providing the signal for the monetary policy. And third is the digital technology. I think every country has seen this acceleration of digital adoption during COVID. India has been, favorable in having a large public digital infrastructure and a platform, which has been very important in ensuring that the money is transferred to the right people. People can continue to do their business and life while there's lockdown. So I think those were 3 important points. But clearly, when it comes to risk, the global slowdown is still in front of us. The exports are slowing down pretty radically in many countries. And so things are going to look pretty bleak in terms of trade balance, current account deficit, and many countries could, unless something is done quickly, to end up with financing difficulties. I think second is the growth process or the recovery process has not been as inclusive. I think India has had a problem. Tomorrow we had the data where the economy is growing at 6%. The last quarter 6.25, but the manufacturing contracted by 4.5%. So, and the small and medium enterprises have been disproportionately affected. So there's a whole host of things to be done, but obviously we don't have time to get into there, but there are massive risks in front of the region, including India, and the other countries, especially Sri Lanka and others, continue to be buffeted by a balance of payment crisis issues. Finally, let me end by 30 seconds in a suggestion for ADBI. We believe that development has become intricately more difficult, and from being an abstract concept where you could sit down in your room, do regression analysis, and come up with policy suggestions looking at what other countries have done, to becoming a much more experiential process where you actually have to live to understand the development problems of the people, the countries, and the society. So my suggestion is ADB should actually have a higher footprint in physical presence in South Asia and India, so that we can actually together work on many of the important development challenges that confront this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Misra. Yeah, as I said, India is the next year's T20 presidency. Also, I think Equalia is hosting Think Tank 20 next year, isn't it? So ADBI would like to be actively engaged in T20 process as well. So, you know, the ADBI is hosting T7 next year. So ADBI and Equalia could have close collaboration with each other for T7 and T20. Thanks again. And lastly, let's listen to Dr. Abdullayev. Dr. Abdullayev, thank you for your patience. My question to you is, what are the critical challenges for economic development in CAREC region? Do you have any policy recommendations in response to such challenges?
Thank you very much, Didier Bayek, and also let me congratulate our colleagues, partners from ADBI with 25th anniversary. Actually, last few years, we have built very strong partnership with ADBI on understanding economic changes and transformations in Central Asian region. Recently, CAREC Institute prepared background report for ministerial conference on post-pandemic framework for green, sustainable, and inclusive recovery. The report is now available at the CAREC Institute's website, and I'm
Dr. Abdullayev, you are muted.
Okay. I can't cover all the issues which are relevant to today's challenges and what kind of policy measures we can propose. CAREC region, as well as other parts of around it, faces a plethora of arduous challenges. The ominous outcome of an unusual and unanticipated frequency of black swan events. While a trade war among the major economies was casting a shadow on global economies, economic prospects in 2018, the COVID-19 pandemic wreaked havoc, leaving behind a trail of human tragedy and widespread economic losses, had a disproportionate impact on already marginalized population groups, our burdened health systems, yawning fiscal gaps owing to massive response packages, rising debt levels, the fragmentation of global and regional value chains, and skyrocketing shipping costs. Science delivered on its promise, delivering vaccines in record time. The pandemic receded and quick economic recovery was afoot in 2021 for CAREC region. However, in 2022, witnessed another rare and major geopolitical conflict in Europe, which gave another rude shock to the world by compounding structural damages to the global economy caused by the pandemic. Global prices skyrocketed, as did the prices of other commodities, including in CAREC region. Global food prices reached unprecedented levels, heightening food insecurity and aggravating current account deficits for net food importers. Developed countries, including CAREC region, scrambled to secure their energy supplies and food requirements, while containing inflation through monetary policies and further complicated issues for developing countries which faced widening current account deficit with shrinking windows for borrowing. That's absolutely true for CAREC region. A global producer cycle is also further aggravating poverty indicators, more profoundly owing to food and fuel prices. This can be a recipe for microeconomic disruption, especially in high debt environment, and can also lead to political and social upheaval. While these urgent matters grab most attention, the climate agenda remains an overarching challenge for most developing countries, especially for the CAREC region. Situation outlined above presents extremely complex and challenging environment for policymakers in CAREC countries. Achieving a growth trajectory with a supportive macroeconomic framework in an environmentally sustainable way, with due consideration for distribution, supporting equitable human development, it's defining challenge for public policy makers. But there is also bright spots and good policy recommendations which CAREC countries could follow and are trying to follow. First of all, during past decade, strong growth allowed the CAREC region to substantially narrow the national income gap to the developed economies. But progress has slowed last for a few years, and new sources of productivity need to be found. A major source for productivity growth, sustainability, and green transition is digitalization, and more generally, I would say, innovation and advanced technologies. Also, foreign trade and foreign direct investment are crucial for increasing productivity and securing needed products and services. Adaptation to climate change, safeguarding of food security, energy transition are all highly demand and urgent areas where CAREC countries take to efforts. More important, highlighting part is inclusiveness, not only just, but also core requirement for smooth socioeconomic change in this region. Last but not least, regional cooperation needs further push needed over above of CAREC program activities. I think here CAREC Institute and ADBI can cooperate more and deliver more of regional cooperation opportunities for our economies. Thank you, and once more congratulations to my colleagues from ADBI.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. You pointed out lots of economic challenges we are facing, such as rapidly increased global energy prices, raw material prices, and food prices. You also emphasize improving productivity through digitalization and innovation. Thank you. Thanks again. Thank you very much, all panelists, for your insightful view and perspectives on global economic challenges and policy strategies for post-pandemic sustainability. Now, we are out of time, but I would like to open the floor for some questions. Please do not hesitate to ask any questions to the panelists. I cannot see any. Yeah, Daniel Augustine asked to all the resource speakers, what are the policy challenges you are facing now in your area, Thailand, India, Central Russia? And what strategy policy measures do you recommend to overcome your current challenge? I think this discussions are already addressed by the speakers. So, any other questions? Yeah. One question from my colleague, Reginald Akbar from from ADBI. His question: Thank you to all present for excellent presentation. My question is to all speakers. To survive and thrive in a post-COVID-19 environment, countries need to implement long-term sustainability strategies that allow them to best capture opportunities and shape their post-pandemic futures. The pandemic has also accelerated technology adoption in many countries and has changed how we view a major shift in behaviors, economy, and education system, etc. In your view, what are the most critical factors for countries to thrive in the post-pandemic situation? First, Dr. Deepak, could you please address this question?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Dean. From an Indian perspective, I think India is in a relatively good position, but they can't be too lax about it. And I would say while the macroeconomic stability is a continuous problem, but things are happening and I'm not worried about it. The bigger problem I would see on a structure side is India's trade policy. I think India has kind of sent out a bit of confusing signal about its trade and investment policy. On one side, it's signing up new trade agreements. On the other side, It has policies which some people call protectionist in terms of trying to promote and make in India. So I think having a cohesive, coherent policy to provide the confidence to the foreign investors to come and make in India and have a very good business environment to make it happen would be my wish list for the post-pandemic world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. And Ms. Mahasandana, could you please add some answers to these questions?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. From the Thailand perspective, as I mentioned in my remarks, the challenges would be that since the recovery is uneven, we have to take care of the smaller and vulnerable affected sector, especially the SME, and also we still have high household debt. That is something that we would have to take care. So the policy, of course, overall economic policy is on the recovery, but we still have to take care for this, particular specific group. So the policy would be on the broader perspective, normalizations, of course, on the monetary, especially on the monetary policy, but the financial policy, financial measure is still have to be there to support vulnerable sector so that we would be able to close the gap of inequality as well as, helping them, because tightened financial condition would dampen their vulnerabilities, and it might come back and affected the whole economy again. The other challenging factor in more of the broader perspective, the macro perspective, is uncertainty in the global markets, in the global economies, the threat of, the possibility of recessions and tightening financial condition. That this, if not properly or managed, it would have implication to the financial stabilities of the country. So we will have to be vigilant with all these risks, and the policy will have to be flexible and gradual, as well as depend on the developments in the domestic market, domestic economy, as well as the global economies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Mahasandana. Yeah, we are running out of time, so I needed to wrap up this session. But before closing this session, I'd like to invite Dr. Abdullayev for your final comment, just for 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Didi. I think we are all witnessing very interesting transformations in these different regions, including Central Asia. First, I would stress that resource efficiency is important message to take care both energy and natural resources. Also, trade in the region is important. I think we have to try develop policies which supports regional trade. Last but not least, due to climate change, we have to really seek and also research on energy transformations, especially transformations to more green and reliable and resilient systems in energy. All in all, I think we have a lot of research in our future. I think ADBI and colleagues in Carnegie Institute will handle these challenges. It'll provide more of research-based, more thoroughly planned and balanced policies for future development in Asia and Central Asia as well. Great, thanks once more for your invitation.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullayev. Ms. Liu, do you have any comment just for 30 seconds?
Thank you, Didi. I think I already elaborated in my presentation. I think in the immediate term, the priority of the Chinese government is to prevent the spread of the COVID, to safeguard the people's livelihood and health, and stabilize the economy. In the long term, I agree with all the previous speakers that I think it's very important for every government to promote innovation, to promote inclusive growth, and I think open regionalism is very important. We need to strengthen coordination of our economic policies, the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Liu. Yeah, thank you very much for all the panelists. Please allow me to conclude this session by thank you the speakers and the participants for joining this valuable session. Now let me hand over the session back to our MC, Dr. Pichaya. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Dean Beck, and thank you all the panelists for joining this policy dialogue section. So our last session for the program today is the ADBI 25th Anniversary Essay Award. So I would like just to invite my colleagues, Dr. John Byrne, he's the Vice Chair and also the Senior Research Fellow of the Digital Department ADBI, to be the moderator of this session. John, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Pichaya. So in this session, we will have presentations by the winners of the ADBI's essay contest. We had a very large number of submissions for this competition, over 100, and it was a very difficult selection process, a very competitive set of high quality submissions. In the end, through an assessment by a panel, we finally agreed on the winners, and we're delighted to welcome those 3 winners to present their work today. Allow me to briefly introduce who they are. So the first prize was to Daisy Singh, who's a Senior Research Fellow at the Indian Institute of Technology in Kharagpur, India, sorry. And her essay was entitled, or is entitled, Sustainable Urban Development in India, Emerging Issues and Ways Forward. The second prize went to Shuji Liang, who's a postgraduate student at the Business School at the University of Sydney, Australia. And her essay was entitled, The Invisible Water Crisis, Groundwater Sustainability in Asia and the Pacific. And the third prize went to Hazwan Haini, who is a lecturer at the School of Business and Economics at the University Brunei Darussalam in Brunei. And his essay was entitled Income Inequality, Educational Outcomes and Digital Infrastructure. Can public-private partnerships play a pivotal role in the Asia-Pacific region? So as you can see, the topics that we ended up having as winners were diverse across the ADB priority areas. So the first one is about urban development and sustainability in that regard. Second one was more about agricultural development on groundwater sustainability. And the third one was about digital infrastructure and income inequality. So we had a very diverse range of winners. So this was, very much welcomed by us. And it played a factor as well in terms of our selection. So the structure for this session is as follows. Each of the winners will present for 5 minutes each. And yeah, we will have some time at the end for Q&A. So for the attendees and the participants at this event, please type any questions that you might have in the Q&A box. Please direct it to whichever presenter you wish to direct a question to, and I will pick up those questions at the end of 15 minutes. So the best way is to go through the presentations one by one. So Daisy Singh, please go ahead with your presentation for 5 minutes.
Hello, a very pleasant and respectful wishes to everyone who is here for the event. First of all, I would like to congratulate ADBI, Asian Development Bank Institute, on its 25th anniversary. And I also want to express my sincere gratitude to the Institute and the team for bestowing upon me by appreciating my writing and my ideas so greatly. My second gratitude is directed at my supervisor, mentor, and co-guardian, Professor Pulak Mishra, who has always supported and encouraged me and my writing, my ideas, and shown me the route to a wonderful piece of writing. Many thanks, sir. Very quickly, I would like to briefly capture the main points of my essay titled Sustainable Urban Development in India, Emerging Issues and the Way Forward. I'd like to begin with the crucial but conflicting questions. What if the city What if the city has good transportation and high quality roads, but no pedestrian walkways and poor air quality? What if the community restrooms have no water supply, rainwater harvesting system with no recharge fees, and supply water with no treatment facilities? The data from WHO and UNICEF points to our worry, as you can see in the slides. The models or the concept that is very popular in the urban planning, such as sustainable development goal, especially number 6 and 11, circular economic pathway, which is very much popular these days. But the question is, are the cities really base their development on these traits? If yes, up to what extent? In order to examine this, a small proposal-based study is done for 24 of the 100 smart cities selected under the Smart City Mission India. The results showed that the cities in general have extensively emphasized on mobility-related infrastructure. If we talk about their proposed fund allocation, more than 65% of their fund allocation is dedicated towards that. And only 2.24% for the treatment of drinking water, 1.22% for sewerage treatment, and a mere 0.90% for rainwater harvesting. Even when we talk about the grants and the loans from the international organizations like Asian Development Bank and World Bank, 90% of the loans given are towards the mobility and connectivity related infrastructure, with only 10% of them towards health, education, housing, and water supply related facilities. Hence, given the available resources, aligning the development process with the SDG requires a more comprehensive approach with a special emphasis on supply and water supply and sanitation. And what we need to do, the appropriate design and execution of sustainable tenets of the circular economic framework for resources, that is reduce, recycle, and reuse, need to be prioritized, making the building and the city both as the unit of development. Charging private water pumps according to the capacity and setting up regularly treated water supply networks for drinking and non-drinking water separately would reduce the extraction and indiscriminate water use. Emphasis should also be placed on both the harvesting of water, rainwater, and the recycling of the sewage water. And both the treated water can be used for the non-drinking purposes, such as municipal cleanliness, sanitation, in construction activities, and so on. Along with the rooftop rainwater harvesting, bio roofs, and green porous pavements, together with the solar panels and pedestrian crossings made of the grasses and porous tiles, would help address the four major aspects of urban sustainability. That is, first, filtering and recharging groundwater aquifers, reducing water in drainage system, third, lessening the urban heat island effect, and fourth, aiding carbon sequestration. In either scenario, a properly organized and managed controlled water delivery mechanism and treatment system is required. Furthermore, users should pay for the facilities that's created. The possibility of charging different prices based on the nature of the water use and rewarding more limited use of these precious resources should be explored. Finally, this should be backed by awareness building initiatives and a robust feedback system. Initiatives towards promoting green building and incentivizing the same will be crucial in this regard. I would like to pause my words with this slide, which presents a pictorial summary and the interlinkages within the story I tried to convey in the essay. We discussed the issues present in the development of our cities and the grounds on which we need to focus more. The study of the Indian smart cities presented as emerging issues in the cities of South Asia and the way forward which need actual attention in order to achieve the ultimate aim of sustainable and green cities and the green urbanism. That's all from my side. Thank you, sir.
Thanks very much, Daisy, for an excellent presentation. Also very punctual. I think one of the positives from your essay was the use of data in the analysis and coming to your policy implications based on that data. There are, of course, issues around which should be prioritized in terms of those policies, and perhaps we can get to that in the Q&A session. But now I would like to go directly to the next presenter, who is, excuse me, Shuji Liang. So Shuji, can you please go ahead with your presentation for 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here today and to discuss these important topics with you all. And the topic that I'll be talking about is the issue of groundwater sustainability in Asia and the Pacific. So groundwater is a critical source for people's livelihoods and needed for many agricultural and industrial activities. Over the past few decades, demand for groundwater has been growing steadily in Asia and the Pacific due to the region's rapid socioeconomic development and population expansion. Asia and the Pacific is now the biggest groundwater abstractor in the world, and around 80% of the population in the region depend on groundwater for drinking source. However, the increasing reliance on and overexploitation on groundwater also raised many concerns on resource sustainability and the environmental effects, and in turn, the associated impact on climate change and societal well-being. For instance, in the context of the People's Republic of China, since the 1980s, the groundwater level in the North China Plain has declined by about 1 meter per year due to the intensification of socioeconomic development. But there has been little advancement towards sustainability since then. It is also estimated by recent research that over 80% of the PRC's monitored wells are polluted, and more than 80 million people continue to consume high salinity groundwater. And drinking contaminated groundwater can have health-related risks, and problems can take years or decades to manifest. In India, groundwater supplies about 60% of agricultural water and 85% of drinking water. However, with Delhi's population set to quadruple in the next 50 years, the issue of meeting water demand amid fast groundwater depletion and pollution is concerning. Also in Iran, the groundwater situation is being exacerbated by several causes, including rising temperatures, the ongoing urbanization process, the increased wheat production. Land subsidence and problems with water quality have both been exacerbated by subsequent drops in groundwater levels. Other Asian economies are also facing major challenges due to unsustainable groundwater production. So what hinders groundwater sustainability in Asia and the Pacific? The primary problem is the dilemma of choosing between groundwater supply and national development. So issues such as population growth, economic development, and poverty eradication are more important in developing countries. Limiting the production of groundwater can be challenging since groundwater may quickly expand agricultural productivity and therefore food production, which is structurally a vital part of the economies of many countries. The second problem is an insufficient operational framework. So Pakistan, for example, has failed to establish an effective regulatory framework and technological capacities, while India has largely ignored its existing regulations, leaving groundwater management an invisible problem. Well, although the PRC does have in place technological, fiscal, and legal structures, but the implementation is still problematic. Economic tools such as water quotas and taxes are not widely or effectively implemented. The regulations have not kept up with the rapidly expanding use of land and industrial and urban growth. Another problem is the lack of data and transparent information which affects the entire region. In most areas, basic water level data are available, but detailed information on groundwater quantity and quality with critical parameters is mostly scheduled. There is even less information available to the public on the threats to sustainability posed by groundwater contamination. So how groundwater could be handled sustainably? Well, enhancing cooperation between among different departments is a necessary step in solving the problems of fragmented management. A thorough and consistent framework as well as communication is necessary for effective management implementation. It's also crucial to establish an integrated network for data monitoring that can be used to evaluate aquifer changes and better assess the problems related to groundwater resources. And scientific support should also be strengthened for analyzing the effects on the quantity and quality of groundwater and providing a comprehensive viewpoint for decision making. Bridging the theory-practice gap will also help to reinforce technological capability. Relevant information should also remain transparent for easy access, often via a newsletter or an online platform. Encouraging public engagement will also be beneficial for regulating agricultural and industrial activities, as well as improving water conservation in relation to water-saving technologies. So lastly, ensuring the sustainability of groundwater resources and the security of water is as vital as developing socioeconomic conditions in serving countries' populations. So to create a promising and sustainable future together, scholars, policymakers, and organizations must take prompt action on groundwater issues. So I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Juji, for that presentation. You really hit on a very important policy issue on this groundwater sustainability. And I think, you know, there will be different priorities given the regional differences with respect to how important this issue is for particular economies. And that's something that we will hopefully get to in the Q&A, although we have limited time availability, as you can see. I would now like to move to the final presenter, who is Hazwan Haini, to present his paper or his essay. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
5 minutes. Yes.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Asian Development Bank Institute for choosing my essay, and I've really enjoyed all the panelists. Straight to my essay, the thesis is fairly simple. We know that income and wealth are increasingly concentrated. As a result, addressing inequality has traditionally become very important for many policymakers and governments. Traditionally, the policy prescription has been introducing minimum wages, expanding taxation and welfare, investing in education, amongst other things. However, there is an important factor that is changing the dynamics of inequality, and it continues to be a part of everyone's life, and digitalization. So the whole digital divide is not exactly a new idea, and it focuses on the disparities of those with access to technology and those without. My central thesis, however, revolves around the recent pandemic. Many people were just forced to adopt new forms of technology, and this goes across many industries. For example, the educational sector practiced remote learning. Many firms adapt to working from homes. And even before the pandemic, many children have already moved into online platforms such as Roblox to play games and socialize, while many mobile banking system has been crucial for agricultural systems in Asia, such as Indonesia. But the pandemic exposed a lot of weaknesses in many developing economies. The nature of the pandemic forced many to adopt these newer forms of technology at an extremely fast rate. One of the glaring weaknesses that I highlight was seen in the educational sector. So a report by the UNICEF and the ITU documented that some children in Vietnam would walk all the way to their nearest school, stand outside the gates just to obtain Wi-Fi. So it's quite sad. And this affects even those above the poverty line, as the transition towards online platform and say educational lectures and classroom meant that some lower income families had received a lower quality level of education. as an academic myself, I know some students that access Zoom, for example, or an online lecture had to use a mobile phone instead of a PC or a laptop, something that really affects the delivery of their learning. So digital inequality is something that is slowly becoming, or should be more important, addressed to tackle income inequality, especially in regions such as the Asia Pacific, where internet penetration rates in developing and least developing countries are lower than 50%. So going back to policy prescriptions, addressing infrastructure gap is traditionally not a common policy for addressing inequality, but this might have to change, especially since education and digitalization are becoming interlinked. And we know in research that educational outcome at a very early age can lead to persistent inequality. So those inequalities can start at a very young age, especially when they have varying levels of educational quality. If many poor or marginalized students are less likely to have these access, then it might lead to this persistent inequality. So investment in the digital infrastructure can reduce inequality in the long run, since it affects the quality of education. So that's the overall kind of thesis. So now we know that we need to address this. How do we do so? We could just prescribe policies to encourage governments to invest in more digital infrastructure. That's something very lazy and probably very hard in practice. Governments are increasingly faced with excessive fiscal burden. According to the Asian Development Bank, the investment gap is around 2 to 5% of GDP, which must be filled in by the private sector. And that is a substantial amount. You could address this gap by investment by foreign firms, but the telecommunications industry is a sensitive industry. There's a lot of national concern. So again, the idea is to introduce public-private partnerships, which is already mentioned earlier in our first panel, Professor Yoshino. It's an increasingly common way to finance the development of general infrastructure. So it's just an arrangement between a government and private entity. There are various forms of PPPs, but overall, it mainly shares the risk to align the private firms with socially oriented initiatives. And the government as a stakeholder can benefit from the technical knowledge. So overall, I argue that PPPs are key to addressing modern inequalities through digital structure investment. In the short run, however, this transition causes potential risks to jobs in low and middle skill categories that can temporarily worsen inequality. Governments must take this into account to ensure upskilling provisions are in place. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Hazwan, for your very comprehensive presentation in spite of the time constraint. I'm somewhat conscious of the time and also to have some sort of Q&A. So I can see that in the Q&A box, there are already questions which are being answered, in live format. So I would propose that I will ask each of the presenters a question that I had, and then that shall be the Q&A session, as well as the questions in the Q&A box, which the presenters will type the answers to. So, and I will ask the presenters to please be concise in your response, like limit it to 1 minute. That would be very much appreciated. So first of all, to Daisy, I can see that in your essay, you used a data set of 24 cities. Now, did you find that there were, differences in policy priorities according to the level of income that the city may have? So deprived versus, for example, more less deprived areas.
Yes, up to a certain extent, I must say. As I studied took the proposal-based study of the 24 cities selected under the Smart City Mission, I found that what we actually have the concepts like sustainable development and SDG goal number 6 for the sanitation, 11 for the sustainable cities and resilient cities. The same is not actually in practice. The cities in general, their development model is skewed toward the physical capital generation. But the social capital on the front of social capital, human capital, financial capital, and natural capital is still very far away. So in my study, I found that more than 65% of the city's allocation is dedicated for the physical capital improvement, while only less than 35% is dedicated to the other four. So I can say that yes, up to certain the practice and the policies are not up to the mark.
Okay, thank you very much, Daisy. Next question to Shuji. So, yeah, your essay was on a very important topic, given that it has ramifications for other parts of the economy. So my question is, which economies in Asia are most affected by this? And what would be the most immediate policy actions recommended? Because in your essay, you highlighted a number of different areas which you'll be focused on, but could you answer that, please?
So based on my research, the countries that suffer extremely high risk in terms of groundwater level decline include the northern part of India, Oman, and other arid and semi-arid areas, especially in the central part of Asia. So I do think it's important for countries to understand the underlying factors that drive their water-related risk and respond accordingly. However, a prominent barrier to effective water policy implementation in most countries is the missing and patchy groundwater data. As optimizing water resources management requires good measurement and accurate accounting of multiple factors, including like water supply, efficiency, demand, location. And this data problem will limit the possibility for groundwater policy monitoring and evaluation. So to reduce the gap in data, I do think the governments should pay more attention and invest more, prioritize more in groundwater monitoring technologies and human resources as well. And national policy changes might be needed to finance data archives and accessibility, ensuring regular updates, quality checks, and safe storage. So these technologies and improved governance of water data will further allow a range of users and organizations to independently examine the data and discover innovative ways to improve groundwater management and security.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question goes to Hazwan. And in your presentation and in your essay, you talked about the importance of PPPs in terms of the implications for digital infrastructure investment. But so that my question is, how can the private sector be best incentivized to get involved in these PPPs? And are particular Asian economies better placed to succeed than others?
Thank you. So a lot of the think tanks and research, including Asian Development Bank, ESCAP, UNOPS, talks about how government plays an important role in creating this enabling environment. So one of these is the traditional institutional environment, a strong legal and regulatory framework. So this goes to your traditional economics support, just protecting your investors, just providing them clarity for the private sector. The other ones would be just a clear policy orientation. So investors know, or the private sector know, what projects are going to come up. Again, PPP it goes deeper than that. So having this clear policy orientation with long-term vision gives a lot of confidence, and just some form of body of financial support as well that will make these projects profitable. Again, Prof. Yoshino earlier talked about it, how there's that trade-off. Users want low price. These private investors want to make the biggest bang for their buck. So there has to be that trade-off. Now, in terms of Asian economies, it's very difficult to say. I wouldn't know for sure, but I know a lot of countries are starting to have their own independent PPP units that are usually, not necessarily independent, but under government ministries. So nearly 90% of countries in Asia has some form of PPP units. So it is something that a lot of Asian countries are trying to kind of focus on. But the main differences, again, is whether these PPP units have guidelines or an actual law. So at the moment, I don't know specific countries in terms of which is more effective or not, but it's very difficult to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much to all three presenters, and congratulations once again on your success in the competition. Your essays were very well received, and really zoom in on some of the priorities that we're looking at here in ADBI and also more broadly at ADB. So well done and best of luck in your future careers. I'll now hand back the floor to Pichaya. Pichaya, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, John, and also thank you all the three essay winners for your comprehensive presentation. So we come to the end of this 25th anniversary celebration event. I would like just to give the floor to the Dean and the CEO of Asian Development Bank Institute one more time to give his closing remark. Dean Sonobe, please.
Okay, Pichaya, thank you. I didn't prepare my closing remarks, but I tried. So thank you, all speakers, for your congratulatory address and valuable suggestions to the future, which are all taken to heart. So, there is an often used English phrase, time flies. But 25 years didn't fly. Instead, at ADBI, not time, but people fly very fast. For example, this morning, I came back from Jakarta to Tokyo. And on the way, I was working, reading and drafting papers, in addition to approaching to Tokyo. So I was making progress faster than jet aircraft. And my colleagues work harder than I do. Actually, to be honest, I had to take a nap at lunchtime, but the young colleagues can work harder. So the ADBI's journey for the last 25 years must have achieved a lot because of these hardworking people. And indeed, ADBI became one of the major think tanks in the world in just 25 years. So this was a great achievement. And I would like to emphasize that this achievement was done in spite of the very small size of ADBI in terms of human resources. And actually, smallness is beauty as long as ADBI is concerned, as far as ADBI is concerned. So small size, and then everybody is employed in short term, just 3 years or maximum 5 years, including the dean, with some exceptions. And then these two things, small size and short-term employment, is kind of wonderful, has wonderful results. If, for example, if I had, for example, 100 PhDs, and then I would think, how can I fully utilize these human resources? But we have very small number of researchers. So we don't think that we can solve so many divergent problems. That's why we toss the questions to researchers and thinkers in the world. And then we try to find out the real expert. Well, we try to find out the researchers who have already been working on the very emerging new issues. By doing so, we can, deliver some answers to the policymakers who want to know something about new knowledge related to the issues they are working on. So network is very important. As J.H. Park mentioned, and also Professor Yoshino emphasized. So networking is very important. So we are really relying on the external networks of excellent researchers and the new talents outside ADBI. And also, in order to handle so many new issues, policy challenges, we are taking the full advantage of digital technologies. But there are rooms for progress or improvement in terms of this use of digital technologies. And we are really demand-driven. So J.H. Park mentioned that he started needs survey, but after him, needs survey stopped. But we recently resumed needs survey, and we are now devoting more time and energy to listen more carefully to policymakers in developing Asian countries through ADB headquarters and resident mission colleagues about their needs for knowledge or research. So the keywords at ADBI is small size and network, short-term employment. Because of short-term employment, we are always changing. We are always welcoming new members. So who will bring new network and new skills, new knowledge. And of course, after finishing their term at ADBI, and then they go to other places, and then they can come back after a few years, and then bring again the new networks and the new experiences. So this is a revolving door, and then digitalization and demand-driven approach. So now we are merging these features of ADBI, which are kind of could be weakness, but we are turning them into strengths. And then we are merging all of these features into a new business model of think tank, which I call three-sided digital platform with revolving door career path. So three-sided means we are catering three worlds: world of policymakers, world of researchers, and the world of other think tanks. So, and then we help one world, then other two worlds also thrives. And then, so they have mutually beneficial. And adding revolving door, I think this will make ADBI more and more useful organization for Asia and the Pacific and beyond. And then I really hope everyone in this virtual room can come back to get together again at ADBI's 50th anniversary celebration. So with that, I conclude this celebration event. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today.